action!
She's an iconic character, one of the greatest action heroines ever conceived.
She's trying to protect her son and prepare him for an uncertain future, and who can't relate to that?
John, now!
If you could prepare for these things, knowing that they're going to come, can you change your destiny?
Sarah Connor.
Where is he?
Hope is crucial to the story, because if you didn't have hope, then there wouldn't be anything left to fight for.
What we've done, and what we've endeavored to do, and what Josh and our writing staff has done, is to create big ideas and narrative surprises. And I think that that's the best way that we've paid homage to the movies and the franchise.
Come with me if you want to live.
It's one of those formative films for people. So you really have to take that seriously, and the hard part is at some point you have to sort of take that and make it your own.
Three of us sitting at a restaurant, Josh and James Middleton, with 4 chairs. The first thing I said was, gentlemen, there's an empty chair here. And this chair is Jim Cameron's, because I respect him so much and respect what he's created that I have to give all of myself to make this as good as it can be.
And action!
The most important thing to me is the characters. I mean, I think you really do want to be as true as you can to the characters, but also you have to build on them. I mean, it's different. Sarah Connor in T2, you couldn't have that character exist every single episode in a series. You know, I mean, you need to see a lot different kind of ups and downs in the characters.
The predicament that she was left in after Terminator 2 was outstanding dramatically. Yes, she's, for the moment, vanquished the T-1000, but she no longer has a protector Terminator. She's surely being pursued by law enforcement who would think she's a domestic terrorist. And she's got to raise a 14-year-old son. I thought that was a fantastic jumping-off point for a series.
Rather than to make it a series that is, in a sense, a sound-alike or a TV version of or something of that nature, or just kind of retreading things that happened in the movie, Josh was able to actually take the story that had been created so beautifully and enhance it and turn it into this next step, which has become the Sarah Connor Chronicles.
Where are we? Same where. Different when.
There are other things that Josh brought to the pitch that are purely from his imaginative mind. And the biggest one was to use the time travel, motif that is present in all the Terminator movies to move characters into the future.
It's really helped us significantly because it did shake us free from the timeline in a nice, logical way where we could kind of go forth and do what we wanted to do. And I think one of the things that was important to me was not to do a chase show.
The Terminator movies were based on a chase dynamic. If we did that in the series every episode, it would be very boring to our fans, and boring is anti-Terminator.
The mythology is it started in Los Angeles, so it makes sense that we could, if we were going to try to find it and fight it and stop it, that we would be in Los Angeles. And to make a television series work creatively, you want your heroes to be proactive and kind of driving the action.
We can go kill it before it's born. You can stop running, stay in one place, fight.
The date on the tape. June 8th, 1997. Do you know that date?
In terms of casting the show, we went through a fascinating process. It was a 16-week process, and that's long for television. So Josh and I and David Nutter were looking at lots of auditions.
You had people come in that were doing their best Linda Hamilton impression, and it's disturbing in some ways, I mean, you want someone who's going to come in and make it their own.
It was interesting, Lena had not seen the Terminator films, and it was important for her, just as an actress, not to copy that, not to really see that. So, to me, it was about kind of letting her understand the headspace of where Sarah Connor was in T1 and then in T2, and kind of talking through that with her so she could get a sense of the history.
Tell me where they went.
Lady, go to hell.
Where they went, or I'm gonna beat you to death. Don't call me lady.
She's such a great character, besides being known by the public. I haven't watched the movies, so I read it and took her as something completely new.
We can't stay here, John. No one knows us. We're safe. Don't you think that, John? No one is ever safe.
Thomas Dekker was very familiar with the material and was very kind of aware of what he was doing, but also was smart enough to be able to kind of move past the character.
his own personal life is not unlike John Connor with respect to a young kid that's moved around a lot and had, in a sense, a vagabond existence. So in many respects, he could draw a lot of the John Connor sensibilities from his own life, and that really helped make it more real and more interesting.
Isn't that what I'm supposed to be? A hero? Isn't that who I am?
I never once said I'm gonna completely ignore and not incorporate what was done before, but I also didn't say I was gonna make a carbon copy of it, because it's the same thing with any of us who are repeating these characters, is that it's a television series. It has to be, some things work better in a compact 2.5-hour film than they do in a lot of episodes.
What model are you? Are you new? You seem different.
The character of Cameron, I mean, I knew that I wanted Summer pretty much from the beginning. I had tried to cast Summer years ago on a different show in a completely different part. We still saw a lot of people for that role. I mean, you can't just bring one person in. You know, we had seen a lot of actors for that role, and I just kept saying, I want to bring Summer, get Summer in here.
It's okay, John. It's not the first time we've done this.
Josh Friedman wrote the role for Summer Glau. So when she came in to do her audition, really no one else entered our mind after that.
I wanted to take the opportunity to play a Terminator and really go for it and be a robot and get that across, but she's so much more than that. She's very complicated. I didn't want to just play her like a normal girl and then play her like a robot. I had to sort of bring them together and make it believable.
What are you guys talking about?
Just making conversation.
I need reconstructive surgery.
You need a consult. You'll have to call Monday.
No.
The design, the story, the universe of Terminator is a big universe. But you have to stay within the realm of that mythology. And that mythology is not only the story, the narrative, but it's also the aesthetic mythology.
There was a big question of, can we execute in a credible way? And what Jim Lehman showed right from the beginning is that yes, we could. And that gave us freedom to move forward, and it gave Josh and the writing staff freedom to come up with ideas that pushed the effects envelope.
You know, Jim Lima was probably one of the top Terminator fans on the planet to get involved in visual effects. He brought all his love for the Terminator franchise to this, and to me it's always about, whenever you're working with anybody, get the most out of them and let them dance and let them go for it.
You can call Jim up and say, what do you think about this? And he'll come back to you with 5 really great ideas. He's not just someone who executes things.
To create science fiction, which is the realm of ideas, the realm of possibilities, you have to always start with an established foundation. And that established foundation is your story logic, is your design logic, is your world logic. Everything grows from it.
In terms of the early concept drawings, Jim Lima did a drawing of the gun that's assembled in the safe in the pilot. And it was not described more than a really serious, gnarly gun. Jim Lima took that idea and created something that was beyond what we expected.
What is it?
Hope.
It had to work, it had to be physically built, it had to physically come apart into a lot of small little pieces, and it also had to make sense in terms of its function.
Is this nuclear?
No, not really.
There's these spinning magnets, and there's a reason for that. Is when the plasma turns red, it is injected into this magnetic environment that allows the plasma to form into a cylinder, a billet, and when it gets to the right temperature, then it is injected through this little sphincter that allows it to go into the firing chamber. At that point, you have a choice, either to fire one slug of it out, or you could fire it as a pulse.
From the beginning, I always pitched the Endo was going to look about as close to the old school T-800 as we could.
Studying the design that James Cameron and Stan Winston did is a genius design. It is an incredibly brilliant piece of engineering.
Jim designed a new endoskeleton, you know, that looks very much like previous endoskeletons, but when he started to analyze previous endoskeletons, he realized there were certain things that they couldn't do.
The nut to crack was how far to deviate from the design, and yet at the same time what I wanted was that the audience in their first read went, that's a Terminator. started looking at ways of improving this thing. And if it is a bipedal tank, it is something that's designed to destroy and kill people, then it should be made to be more brutal, and it should be made to withstand more damage. It is an infiltrator. It is a designed piece of machinery created to emulate human movement. And so it is a very complicated thing. It has a lot of pieces that all have to work. Case in point, if you look at the 888 design versus the T800 design, the thighs, the inner thighs on the 888 have sharp blades on them. If you ever get into a situation where that thing could get its legs around your neck, it would cut your head right off. The back of the elbows and the shoulders are improved for hitting and ramming through walls. Also in the torso area, the trunk area, I put like a little beaver tail kind of protector over that area because you could mess up a Terminator by screwing up the vertebrae. Just in case it gets whacked in the torso, it'll still be able to move and operate and function.
Please remain calm.
This Terminator looks similar, and yet it has abilities that are built into its endoskeleton that the T800 didn't have. What I tried to do was take that idea and plus it by also making the replicated skeletal members act as weapons, shields, or cutting devices.
Jim approaches him like he's like an artist, but also like an engineer. So he'd come and say, "Well, I think he'll have better flexibility in his legs, and he'll be able to move better." And you're like, "Jim, I mean, you're really building a Terminator, which I think he would if he could." I think we did.
3, 2, 1, action! And cut!
People want that roller coaster action. That's what they associate along with the visuals and the story point here on a show like this that follows Terminator 2.
Joel Kramer brings an amazing amount of practical experience to any sequence that we're doing so that we can define what our stunts are going to be, practice them, and execute them very quickly.
Action!
The fact that you have a guy on the show who has been a double for Schwarzenegger, who worked on the movies, who knows Cameron, has worked with Cameron, and understands that aesthetic, it's great. I mean, it's great to have a connection.
Josh was very adamant about continuing what James Cameron had created. And the thing is, what's great about a show like this is you can take it over the top because you've got unstoppable machines where the characters can't be hurt.
Having someone who really understands Terminators, how they move, how they fight, which is a big part of it. I mean, it's, there's no reason for Terminators to do fancy martial arts. They hit you and they throw you around and they try to kill you. And I think trying to make that seem visceral and real is important.
We did have Terminator boot camp, so I thought, oh my gosh, what am I going to have to do now to play a Terminator? So I didn't have to do any martial arts training, but what we did do in Terminator boot camp was work on taking away our human habits. Terminators don't do anything that isn't necessary, so I couldn't move my hair out of my face or adjusting my clothes.
You might want to put those back in the holster. Oh.
We first started working with weapons, and she picked it up really quick.
He was really working with me on being able to hold a gun very naturally and not to move my head at all, not to close my eye. I've worked with guns before, but it's very different using a gun as a Terminator.
I didn't want her to look like a trained FBI agent or a police or somebody militant. She had to look a little different. And one of the things we had to work was that stoic look she has to have of never blinking and showing emotion. And it's hard not to blink. Even with the earplugs in, it's hard not to blink, and she pulls it off. We have 8 days, basically, to get the episode in. It's like a mini featurette. Well, I'll go out and shoot 3 days of second unit of just pure action.
We just need a little more at the bottom, Lane, that's it. That's easy to fix.
It's like doing a feature but being timed, and there's a lot of action which takes 2 or 3 days when we have to do it in a day. It's exciting and it keeps momentum up.
Joel will come up with some fantastic ideas, and he'll say, this is what I'm thinking of. I'll have to sit back for a minute because you're not going to find this out of a book. It's out of the box.
I've worked with Steve on a lot of projects. I always try to request him on projects.
I'll get the storyboards, and that helps basically everyone in the crew figure out what we're going to do and what I have to do. If a car has to flip at a certain point, I know the point it has to flip at.
Storyboards to me are really important. On this show, they actually give us a lot of rehearsal time. They know where to focus the money on. I'll sit with a storyboard artist and design car chases and stunt sequences. I'll run them by the director and get his input and show him what he needs to get with first unit versus this is what I'm going to get with second unit, so it melds. It's got to be seamless.
Well, challenges are monumental. I mean, you have so much money, you've got so much time, and you got to basically pull a rabbit out of the hat.
I've always known who I am and why I'm here. Protect my son. Prepare him for the future.
There are still people that don't believe that there can be a great drama with endoskeletons. What we have in Terminator is the solution to that.
She would not be the first human fooled by a machine.
You can't just make it up because it is science fiction. That's not a hall pass to making it up and not being respectful to drama and real conflict.
How many times are we gonna have this talk?
A lot, I think.
You can get into some of these ideas and play them out in a way that you can't always do in features. Television is a fantastic place to do science fiction.
Right from the beginning, we knew we wanted to go into the future. We didn't quite know how to do it.
There was a lot of people who doubted that we could do the show.
I was very excited with Dungeons & Dragons that they were going to the future.
When I first read it, I thought there's no way. There's no way we can possibly film this.
We had a very ambitious challenge to execute this show on a television schedule and a television budget.
The future episode was something that everyone was looking forward to. Dungeons & Dragons started as an idea that I had had before we even probably got the show picked up. And I remember going in and pitching it to people and thinking, oh, please don't say no, this is so much fun. But I was afraid everyone was going to think it was too expensive.
Josh asked me if he could do an episode which include flashes of the future. And I said yes. And he said, you have rocked my world. So it became a real part of, how we were developing the first season. And it evolved. The first version of it was a much more World War II type of storyline in tone.
It was about Derek kind of getting a little group together. It was like the Great Escape, and they stormed the wire and they got out. And it was big. And up to a point, we were going to do that episode, and it just, at the last minute, it just was too expensive, frankly. And it's one of those horrible things where you they'd done such a great job, and I remember I called them into my office and I just said, guys, we just can't do it. We're just going to have to really radically change the episode, and we have to radically change the episode today so we can hand it in tomorrow. And we sat around for a couple hours, and I had a concept for this house, this sort of house where, they do psychological torture, and I thought, well, that would be smaller. And, we would do this sort of almost weird haunted house kind of thing. And it was more mysterious and more psychological, and that's what we shot, but it was a very, radical change.
We sort of felt that we couldn't spend the entire time in the future. It was just not going to be producible. So we wanted to have a story that took place in the present day and the future. And that's kind of how the Derek story came about.
I was really happy when Josh came up with the idea of having Derek as a character, providing a brother for Kyle. We had had lots of conversations about bringing Kyle back himself. And I told Josh that I thought that it would just make people's heads explode.
Kyle Reese was really, truly a loved character. So carrying that name through the series now and being the only Reese that's really left, a lot of responsibility comes with that.
I think that the character has been a really smart and cool addition, a different perspective to the dynamic.
Metal! It's all around a dream for anyone They give me the best emotional stuff to work with. I have such a great character as far as development and backstory, and it's kind of endless stuff. I can always draw from new things and create new things if I need them. And then I get to kick ass. I get to fight Terminators.
In terms of Dungeons and Dragons, there was really no part of the process that wasn't fun and exciting, but also incredibly difficult. So what we did is do a tremendous amount of preparation. We decided to shoot this episode last, even though it airs earlier as episode number 6. That was in order to give us as much preparation time as we could get and to spread our money as far as it could go.
You need time, especially with something this ambitious, because we had to build the world, we had to build these destroyed cities, we had to build the HKs, we had to build the jet engine, we had to build the chronoportation rooms. You see very, very briefly at the end of the show.
You know, one of the great things about Jim Cameron is, you know, he didn't have a lot of money when he shot the first movie, and the aesthetic that he set up for the future apocalypse, kind of future war scenes, was very low tech and doable. I mean, I think I was always excited that we could recreate what he did.
Fortunately, a brilliant location scout found this beautiful location in downtown Los Angeles. It's not big, but it's exactly what we needed. The bones were right. And what I mean by bones is it was it was rubble pile with rebarb sticking out of it. It was concrete rubble pile. Mike Novotny brought in cars and all kinds of stuff, the residue of our society that he could design the set to. So as much as possible at ground level was real. It's when you got above this rubble pile that it became a set extension, it became a visual effects shot.
They're explaining to me that, oh yeah, everything past the concrete, the sky, the buildings, all that stuff, it'll all be gone.
In CG, we made 3D models of rubble piles and twisted metal and rebarb and pieces of buildings and added that. And then beyond that, more rubble, and beyond that, freeways, and beyond that, you know, what's left over of a Starbucks and a McDonald's, on and on and on and on. The chronoportation room, which you see very briefly at the end of Dungeons & Dragons, it was like, how does that thing work? The technology is time travel. And the jet engines that you see in that room are generators for a tremendous amount of electricity. And so the chronosphere technology is pretty cool. It starts off with a singularity. It starts off with one atom, and it pushes itself outward. It's burning 2008 away, and it's replacing it with air and volume from 2027. It's the way to get you safely into another time zone.
It's the only time I've been happy to be with 3 other men naked is like, you know, I'm traveling through time in Terminator. You know, I don't care, naked, whatever. Let's do it.
HK design is completely new and I think really scary. It looks like a shark.
I upgraded it and refined much like I did with the 888 and just gave it a little bit more logic and a little bit more badassness to it, and then also gave it its own kind of style. You have to watch it frame by frame, but in Dungeons & Dragons, the vertical stabilizers and the engines are rotating and moving. The thing is alive.
You know, when we were doing the battle with the HKs, Jim was on set, so he was talking about what he had planned as far as what they were thinking, and okay, you've got the gun, and you know, I think it's going to kind of swoop down this way and possibly, and we were just kind of throwing ideas.
The whole sequence was set up based on a kind of a motion path where Derek was going to run to that would allow him to be safe, but also give us the wide enough scope HK! To be able to show you destroyed Los Angeles, HK's flying over and explosions happening. It all had to be timed just right.
My job is to get with Joel, where should we put these explosions? And then push the trigger at the right moment. And my concentration is only on the actor and his spot. He hits this mark, boom. Another actor, boom. Another actor, boom. And we watch it closely. And when all that works, it works well.
Boom, there'll be an explosion and run out. Okay, cool.
Steve's really great at designing effects. I wanted him to make it a certain altitude, a certain size, certain volume, and a certain luminance, so I could fly an HK through the explosion. It makes the visual effects look real, because you're actually seeing something that you've seen before. You've seen vehicles drive through fire.
I think my favorite scene is where the Terminator comes down the hall with the machine gun and is mowing people down, and then we have the Terminator tripped up and smashed through a wall. and some are shooting him with an RPG.
I loved the grenade gun I got to use. That was a really fun night.
When you have explosives and squibs going off in there, you've got to make sure that you have the area so it's not so confined. If you're doing an explosion in a confined area, that flame has to go somewhere. And if it can't go up, it's going to go out. And that's what was logistically tough.
That was the first episode we had a real endoskeleton. In episodes before it, we've had the endoskeleton, but it's been a special effect.
Rob Hall has probably lost more sleep during the past production season than anyone building a practical Terminator endoskeleton. I think that when he volunteered to do this, he didn't realize how time-consuming and arduous it would be, but he did a fantastic job. And when you see that endoskeleton in the fire pit, it is just fantastic. I mean, you see all this goop and mess on it, you know, that just ups the level of realism.
I had to break down and actually take off the skin, and it was really, it was a long day, but it was cool. I really like that scene. I like that scene with Dean. That's one of my favorite scenes, probably.
I am blown away by what we were able to accomplish with this show.
If we all didn't work together brilliantly, it'd be a disaster.
I, to this day, haven't seen anything on episodic television that looks like that. It really genuinely blew my mind.
I feel like it looks really good. I feel like it looks like the future apocalypse. I feel like there's a lot of people who hold those scenes very dear to their heart, a lot of fans, and I think they came away saying, yeah, those felt like they could have been Jim Cameron scenes, or those felt like they could have been in the movies. I think that probably the work that we did in Demon Hand was probably the most risky writing we did in terms of alienating fans. I sometimes don't like those kind of big homage-y types of things, and I remember when I walked into the writer's room and they had this weird like cat swallow the canary kind of look, and I'm like, Josh, guess what? We're gonna have her in a cop outfit. It's gonna be like T2, and she's gonna have the sunglasses and the helmet and the whole thing. I was like, really? But I really like it just because she looks so cool.
I thought it turned out very well. It was really fun to see her dressed like that.
I did have a lot of fun with that opening sequence, and of course I remember Robert Patrick. I wanted to wear those exact sunglasses, and the perfect mirrored pair were men's glasses, and I couldn't actually keep them on my head, so we had to pin them on, but I was determined I was going to wear that pair because they matched his perfectly. We wanted it to look just like Robert Patrick. I even exaggerated my movements to be more like his, how stoic and still and deliberate. It was really fun.
She actually had to get those clothes from somebody. So even before the episode really starts, there's a great dramatic question about, oh my gosh, how did she get those clothes?
And somewhere in the city, a naked cop bleeds in an alley.
We here at the TV show are taking the source material and responding to it as writers, as creative people, and emotionally, and as fans. Adding in the backstory about the adoption papers was probably the one thing that potentially violates the canon. And I think it's an idea that we liked in a TV sense, and meaning that you have to add layers to the characters and you have to uncover more things about them as you go.
We were re-examining her time at Pescadero, and the question came up, what were the circumstances? She may have reached the point where she thought the best thing for my son is for me to let him go. And then, of course, immediately regretted making the decision. That sequence of events was beautifully portrayed in the movie. We took that as a basis for this episode, and we just went beyond it. To me, that's a legitimate thing to do, to try to fill in, you know, the cracks in terms of the characters' backstories and their character motivations.
They will kill everyone you love and everyone you hold close, and there is nothing you can do about it.
If you're going to play a mother to somebody, you need to have some kind of connection mentally.
I think one of the main things that fuels how I play this role is his interaction with Sarah. The strongest thing about the relationship is being able to communicate without words, just with looks. And I think that was there in the film, and I think it's there in the show.
She has got this very real issue in her life, which is she gave birth to someone she wasn't ready for, and also happens to be the savior of the world.
John watching that tape is very important, and I think that the reason for that is that no matter how hard Sarah is on him, or how tough she is, or not loving in the normal sense, he kind of excuses all these things because at the root of it all, he knows that she would do anything for him, and she lives and breathes for him, and that bothers him half the time. He feels guilty, and then half the time it feels, fulfills his life. So I think when he sees that, it's kind of, now there's nothing.
They wanted to adopt me. I'm sure your mom would have died before she let that happen. Yeah, you'd think.
I think that that's a horrible blow to him, and it really pushes him into the realm of Derek.
Derek Reese doesn't know anything about anything, but he's able to relate to John in terms of what has happened in his life.
For John, his world on a daily basis is being turned upside down, and he's being forced to question every relationship he has. I mean, he had to question his relationship with his mom and the fact that she would give him up. The closest thing he's ever had to his father is now in his life, and he has this man to look to now, to help him, and it's a big shift and a change for him. Trust the machine. Cameron? Yeah, Cameron. What a joke. Walking around with a name like it's a person. It's not a person. It's not something you should be trusting.
His sense of importance is already threatened by having these two women take care of everything for him, but somehow he was still the only male in the house.
And then it's all just kind of forced on you, and it's like, yeah, here's Uncle Derek now. He's gonna sleep on the couch. He's gonna tell you what he knows as far as saving the world. Good luck, kid.
The day you came for me, I was coming for you. I'll always find you.
I'll always find you.
That's the key, to her, is that she's deeply in love and committed to her son as a person, not even just because he's the potential savior of mankind. She loves him as a mother loves a son.
As much as this is a coming-of-age story for John, John needs to understand that Sarah's made mistakes and she still can be his mom and he can still love her.
Even through the hardest things, they get through it, and yet I think she has changed a little in John's eyes, not by much.
There was a time I was a hero to my son. He thought I walked on water. He knows better now.
Agent Ellison.
Yeah. I got LAPD property on the line.
You're asking about a hand?
One day Josh just came to me and he just said, I've been thinking about, making your character a Christian. What do you think about that? I don't know how it hit him because I didn't talk to him about it, but he thought it would be an interesting contrast.
Beware of false prophets.
You a man of the book?
It has brought me comfort at times.
You're confronted with robots from the future and the apocalypse, and how does that affect you? And does it challenge your faith? Does it confirm your faith?
Ellison is a very interesting character for us because it shows the journey of a normal individual trying to understand the evidence from the war with machines.
I really enjoyed the biblical references dealing with the book of Revelations. That is the absolute turning point for Hage and Ellison.
Well, if what you're saying is true, Sarah, surely there would be some evidence.
His character, after having certain experiences, his belief system has changed. So now I'm looking at things differently. I'm seeing things differently. Things are happening that aren't supposed to be happening, although she said it would happen. Then when I find this hand, it just kind of triggers everything that she said, everything that she did, everything, and then she was gone. What's great about it is she revived me in a lot of different ways because I was just going through the motions, and then she awakened that eagerness to succeed and that desire to solve.
Where is it? She took it. Who? Sarah Connor. She took it.
It illustrates that if a character came in contact with something that is extraordinary that person would not relinquish their personal beliefs in God. In fact, they would probably rely on those beliefs even more so.
That moment of Sarah reaching out past the fire, he realizes, I'm in this now. I've got to keep searching. I thought I was almost done, and now I'm just beginning.
Sarah Connor is someone who believes in the value of each individual. Everybody's life is important. So while having Ellison in pursuit of her again does not help her, she can't let him go. She has to save him.
Not only does she need to teach John to survive, she needs to teach him to survive well, and she needs to teach him that humans are worthy. And I think you can't do that by letting people burn up, you know, in a fire, no matter what the consequences may be for you.
No! You have taken ballet before?
No.
Remember, dance is the hidden language of the soul.
Obviously, one of the reasons we put ballet in is because we knew Summer was a prima ballerina, and I always thought, you know, having a Terminator do ballet is a really cool idea.
Step of the cat.
Will you show me?
The idea that these Terminators are getting closer and closer to being human was something that I really liked. And I thought, can that episode build to a point where when you're watching her dance, you're thinking, oh my God, that's beautiful. I'm so creeped out by it.
I love that she's the student and she's the vulnerable one. And then in the end, she just coldly turns and walks out. I loved being able to show what Cameron's capable of at both ends of the spectrum.
Who are you? You're just a girl. How did you do that?
I'm looking for your brother.
You have to remind people that Terminators are scary and will do anything. And I think we get there because of the voiceover, we get there because of Derek's reaction.
You might have fooled them, but not me. I know you.
I know you too.
Conceptually, a fantastic idea to have Derek Reese, knowing how he feels about these robots and what the future holds, to see him watching this robot affecting something so human and so moving.
Sarah's monologue, I think, is probably my favorite one in the whole series, and makes me cry when I really think about what's worth fighting for in life, the things that bring us joy and comfort as humans. A robot can never understand.
People watch it and think Derek was just crying over the beauty of the moment or how far the Terminators have come. But there's just so much more than that to him. He knows Cameron. He's experienced her before. Not a model like her, her.
That moment between Cameron and Derek is heartbreaking.
I think that was the emotion of it for him. Do the machines take over but then live as people? How far is this gonna go? What world do I live in?
This episode represents what we're trying to say.
The Demon Hand elevates the stakes for the season by showing that Cameron has an agenda of her own. We also see that she can have an amazing negative effect on Derek. When Derek sees her dancing and starts to get teared up, we see that there's an enormous pain and rage.
It's one of my favorite episodes because it's just, it has that wonderful balance of the beauty of things and the horror of things.